So I wanted an Apple Watch for a really long time, and as you might know, about 90 days ago in early December, I actually received the Apple Watch Series 7 Titanium Edition in the 45mm size. Now in this video, I want to talk about a couple of things that I found a little bit strange or annoying whilst using the Apple Watch for the very first time. I've never owned one before. I never actually had anyone close to me have one for an extended period of time. So this is my first-hand experience with the Apple Watch and a couple of points that, again, annoyed me. I will also cover things that I positively find really great about the Apple Watch in a separate video, which I will link down in the description as well as at the end of this video. Now, a couple of these things might actually pertain more to the Apple Watch itself. Some of those things are more about the software side, and some are not necessarily Apple's fault, but more on the developers of certain apps. But let's jump right in. Now, the first point I want to make is about the health data, or in general, the visualization of all the data this Apple Watch is tracking. Generally, Apple is making a big deal about the fact that this watch tracks more information and more accurate information than any other watch out there. However, the thing that I find is that this information is not necessarily very actionable if it is hard to reach, or not really being able to find it in any easy to kind of overview this information way. Now, I'm specifically talking about the fact that on the watch itself, it is incredibly hard to find any way to actually have an overview of all of the health information. Now, there might be other third-party apps that you can install on the Apple Watch that give you that functionality. And I have one, for example, which is called, I think, Fitness View, and also another one which is more about heart rate and stuff like that. But the main thing that I want to say here is that it is kind of annoying that Apple themselves are not able or not willing at this point to provide a good and reasonable overview of all the sleep tracking, health information, heart rate, all of those things easily reachable and overviewable on the watch itself. In this area, I actually have a direct comparison with more of a fitness smartwatch, which Nicole has, and there I don't necessarily like the design or the overall usefulness, and there I definitely prefer the Apple Watch here. However, in terms of the tracking of the fitness aspects and the being able to read more data and information right on the watch and be able to know more about your body in that sense, for example, things like body battery estimate. And there it kind of calculates things together, like, for example, the sleep that you had last night, combining that with your movement throughout the day and all of those things. And it kind of shows you how well rested or how energized you probably are in this moment. So that is something that I find is really hard to find with the Apple Watch itself, and especially annoying because you need tons of different apps. And it's great that there is an app for that, is the slogan that Apple used a couple of years ago. But now it is kind of overwhelming because you have all these different apps that you have to gather. And with that, there's also tons of subscriptions you probably are going to have, and also prices to pay with one-time payments for all these different apps that you might find useful. Now, talking about apps, and that is actually my second point, the Apple Watch has tons of them. There are many applications that are available for the iPhone that also have some sort of a companion app for the Apple Watch. However, there I also have a bit of a grievance with that, because most of those apps are either incredibly feature enriched, like not really built for the Apple Watch and not really packed with great features that I would like to see. Many of them don't really update that regularly compared to their iPhone app counterpart. For example, I find it interesting that many apps don't yet integrate the full-size keyboard on the Apple Watch Series 7. So that is also an issue that I found. And then you have apps like Google Maps, which do work on the watch. But for example, you can't even start a navigation from the watch, despite this also being the cellular version. However, Apple Maps can do that. So there are always these kind of things where I find myself wanting more out of those apps, which they don't yet give me. There are, on the other hand, however, certain apps that are incredibly well done for the Apple Watch. And one of those apps is an app called Work Outdoors. And I will link that in the description. Maybe that's even my favorite app on the Apple Watch in terms of feature richness and also the customizations that you can do directly on the watch. But also with the app on the phone, there's even more possibilities. And overall, that's just an incredible watch if you are going outdoors a lot and you want to track your walks or runs or stuff like that and have much more functionality that way. So that's one of the great apps. However, many apps, as I've mentioned here in this point, are just not that well done in comparison to the whole ecosystem of apps on the iPhone. There, it's a completely different story. Most apps there are just incredible in terms of how well they are done. And here, it's just not the same story at this point. Maybe that's because the Apple Watch is a smaller ecosystem, meaning that there's just not that many people that are buying those apps. And in that way, the optimization for this platform is just not worth it. Now, with many apps on the watch, you have a thing that's the app view. Now, the app view you can do in two different ways. For one, you have the icon overview, where you can scroll out and have a bird's eye view and then zoom in and move around so you find your app based on the icon. And the other way is to actually have all of the apps in just a list view sorted by alphabet, and you have a couple of them as the favorites in the dock view, which are highlighted at the top, or you can have your most recently used apps there, kind of like the app switcher on the iPhone. Now, one thing that I find annoying with the Apple Watch and specifically the app view, where you have all of the icons on the screen and you just scroll out to see all of them and then you tap and find the one that you want, is that there is tons of physics programmed into it, which I don't necessarily need or want. Now, I know Apple has done the same thing with the normal screen on the iPhone. Apps just always move back up to the top left corner. And in this case, with the Apple Watch and this app overview, you have something similar happening where icons kind of snap into place. And if you remove one icon from a certain place, that means that the other icon will actually just fall down into that space, despite still being fairly well connected to other icons. And that is something that I just find annoying because it makes it really hard to consistently have all the apps in certain places, move them around, and make your layout of your apps work for you. So that's something that I found annoying throughout the setup process, and it kind of makes me not want to change my view despite maybe even having ideas of how I could improve that. But speaking about 90 days, that's just about 3 months. And with the Apple Watch, I thought the titanium edition is supposed to have harder materials than the aluminum, for example. And in that regard, I obviously can't really compare anything between different watches because that's really hard to do. But as you can see in this B-roll, this Apple Watch here is not necessarily without any scratches. Without being someone who is going outdoors a lot or working on any special materials or doing any crazy stuff where I would expect more scratches to happen. Now the screen, on the other hand, is completely free from scratches, so that's great. But the housing itself shows a lot of them. Now, I have read in different Reddit posts and stuff like that that it is fairly easy to get rid of those scratches, specifically in the titanium, with a bit of a brush, and you can basically just massage them out or make them more invisible. However, I didn't want to do that yet because I wanted to see how badly those are going to show up on this watch housing so that I can also show this here for you in this video. And I was actually surprised as to how many scratches I have seen on this watch. Now, something to take into consideration here is also that this is the first time that I am wearing a watch consistently ever, pretty much. And that might be a point toward why there are more scratches than if you are someone who's really used to wearing watches. Because for me, it is really a new experience to have to kind of be aware of the watch and also factor that in when I'm moving through spaces to not kind of like get stuck or clash it or something. So that's something that might increase the number of scratches. But again, I was just surprised as to how much scratching I have seen to this point on this watch. And you can see for yourself based on the B-roll I showed here. And the last point is that I actually expected to use more of the smart features of this watch and more of the different watch faces. But actually, I just find myself using just about one watch face. I have set up a couple more, but I basically never use them. And the one that I am using is the California one with the Roman numbers on the upper side and the Arabic numbers on the lower half. So that's the design that I chose, and it makes the watch look a little more classic. especially with the always on display and with a color set that is kind of monochromatic. And I just have the step counter and the date showing up on the watch itself. Nothing fancy there, no special effects or whatever. That's just the simple way that I started to like to use this. And as I mentioned, I just expected myself to use more of the smart features, which doesn't mean that I don't like the smart features. I just like them hidden away in the app overview or with Siri commands and stuff like that. The overall look of the watch itself I prefer with this classic style in the watch face and a leather band. Now that's my list about things that have annoyed me about the Apple Watch Series 7 Titanium Edition that I have used for the last 90 days. Now if you're also interested in knowing about the positive and really interestingly good things about the Apple Watch and how I have been wearing it for the last 3 months, then you can check out my other video linked in the description and also up here on the screen at the end of this video. Now with all that said, I hope this was an interesting video for you, and if it was, please give it a thumbs up. That always helps out my channel. If you have any questions, thoughts, or ideas, you can leave those in the comment section down below. And with all that said, I hope you have an amazing day, make it your life, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao!